Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Community Exchange podcast. I am Matthew Scott Goldstein, better known as MSG in the industry. On this podcast, I'm talking to the visionaries building the media ecosystems of the future. Together, we cover the challenges, the opportunities, and what's next for our industry. Always, the Community Exchange podcast is brought to you by OpenWeb, the company building a safer, fairer, and more trustworthy internet. Now, we have a great conversation for you. Paul Bannister is Chief Strategy Officer at Raptive, a leading voice in digital advertising, having been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, Adweek, Ad Exchanger, and every other publication out there, and he makes me a little jealous because he's so good at this. He is speaking candidly all the time about Google, AI, data privacy, and other critical industry topics. He leads the company's monetization teams across ads, affiliate marketing, and new revenue streams. His teams work to create compelling media and commerce experiences that connect the world's largest brands with the company's more than 5,200 creators. It used to be 5,000, now it's up to 5,200. Paul's been a key architect in building the company's industry-leading programmatic approach and shaping the company's cutting-edge products and programs. Now, Paul, before we start talking about the industry, what's going on today, I'd love to hear more about your 18 years at Raptive, and I think you told me it's even longer, and more importantly, your degree in computer science and engineering.
First, thanks for having me. Great to be here. So to answer your question, I'm gonna go back even further. When I was a kid,
oh no, here we go.
There were two things that I really liked. One was computers. I was a child of the 1980s, and I had, I had an Atari 400, I had a Commodore 64, I had a Dell 286 computer. Like I had I was very into it, learned how to code at a young age.
12, 13, 14?
I think I learned BASIC at 9 or 10.
Damn.
And then,
so you were literally the computer prodigy back then.
It was part of my DNA. Like that's what I loved. The other thing I loved, which is a funny connection to how I got to this, is in retrospect, I realized like I loved like news and information. I started a newspaper for my block when I was 9. A friend of mine had a printer.
Where did you grow up?
On Long Island.
I love this.
My friend had a printer. I made a newspaper and I reported the news to the block. I did it.
Did you charge?
No, I just walked
were there ads?
And delivered it.
Were there ads?
We had, which I should have done. We had green printer paper, so it was always came on green. I only did 2, so this was not a big thing, but I like did it. And
your parents must have been so proud of you.
They didn't even know what I was doing. The computer stuff was a mystery to them. This stuff was a mystery to them. So I did more of that sort of stuff over time. In college, I worked on one of the school newspapers. When I got out of college, I started one of the earliest websites in the video game business, and I've written a couple of books in the early days. So like
you've written books also?
Yeah, on video games.
This is the best interview so far to start with. Go.
So anyway, I sort of had these two passions that I didn't quite figure out entirely until I got older. But like I loved media, as I now know it is and it is called, and I loved computers, and like that's sort of what got me to where I am, I think.
So you graduated, and what was your first job out of college?
I sort of had 2 jobs actually. My first true job was I worked in desktop support. I fixed computers for a magazine publishing company.
Which company?
It was called CMP. They were like
I remember
like
them.
Corporate IT magazines. It was like I can't even remember the names. Information Week was
I remember that
one. So I fixed computers for 2 of the big magazines and dealt with all that junk. At the same time, at home, I started this video game magazine or video game website and did that kind of in my spare time. And
what was the domain? What was the URL?
The URL was ogr.com. So I'm very,
wait, OGR three.
Yeah, one of my few regrets in life is losing that domain.
Who bought it? Who bought it and for how much?
So I started this website. It got pretty big. It got bought by a magazine publishing company. I went to work for that magazine publishing company, which was a different company. And then they sold it to another company, and I freelanced for them. And then they owned it, and that company I think went out of business, and just it all got lost in the shuffle. And
okay, so can I go to ogr.com right now?
You can. It's owned by like a domain parking service.
And it's being sold for $17 million.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm sort of, bitter and twisted.
Okay, that's one regret so far.
Yeah, exactly. So I had these 2 jobs, both in publishing, but in very different parts of it. And that's how I got started.
And then how did you get from there to Raptive? And I went on LinkedIn. It was 17 years, 11 months. And you tell me that's incorrect. It's even longer.
It's actually even longer than that because the company that is Raptive has gone through a couple of different pivots and changes and
Cafe
what
Mom,
it is.
Cafe Media.
And we even had stuff before that. The company, the older company is like even more different and not relevant to much things. But I've been with the same company for ages, which is I think a sign of,
I was at Viacom for 16 years. I have a pension.
That's good. I don't have a pension, unfortunately.
Okay.
We were a startup. We're not a startup anymore. But it's a good place.
Okay. So what was your first job at this Raptive Cafe Mom, Cafe Media company?
So
did you start fixing computers?
No. Well, again, you go back to the very, very beginning. I was sort of like the head of IT for a little bit. Like when we were building an office, I was literally like running Ethernet cables and like setting up servers and stuff like that. I ran technology for a while at the company. I was the CTO of the company. I was sort of like the head of product for quite a while. I launched a few of our...
This makes so much sense of connecting all the dots about what you do today.
Well, and so what I learned, to go back to my origin story a little bit, I knew I loved computers. And when I was younger, I thought like, and probably this was more true, like if you like computers, the only thing you can do in college is get a computer science degree. Like that's what you do. And I got out of college. I had some coding jobs also kind of in the early years. And what I learned was I'm like an okay programmer. I'm not amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but
you'd be a good programmer today with all the AI to help you, right?
Maybe so.
Right.
But what I'm good at is like understanding like the business stuff and also understanding the technology and figuring out how to like plug them together. And like, that's kind of what I sort of migrated to over time, where I ran technology at the company. I ran product at the company. I launched new businesses. I actually ran ad sales for a number of years. And
previously, because now you're running ad sales again, right?
I directly ran ad sales.
Okay.
Like I was the head of the sellers. Like I was out, pitching.
You're selling all. So
yeah.
Jack of all trades.
So
Paul Bannister.
I've tried a lot of things, been in a lot of parts of our business, which has been very interesting. And it's been a lot of good experiences.
And then how did you evolve to, let's go back. So when we first met, because we were texting about this, we first met 11 years ago in 2013 when I was working at Correlate, which is actually measurement and attribution, which is interesting because every conversation we have right now goes back to measurement and attribution.
100%.
And we started talking then, and then, which I didn't remember, but you found the email. And then we started talking again after that when we had the first roundtable with the header wars.
Yep.
Right. And I remember going back and forth with you.
I can't remember, like, I want to go back and look at what we talked about in those early conversations, because like we were one of the first big publishers, if not the first big publisher, to adopt header bidding. And so we were in super early and we were very, I think, knowledgeable about it, but also like passionate about it. Like we really believed it was like a really smart way to like do programmatic. But before header bidding, I think programmatic was like useless from a publisher perspective. This was like
7, 8, 9 years ago, right?
I think 10? It was 10 years ago.
I thought it was 2015 was my email, I thought.
Your email, well, the header wrappers came a little bit later.
Okay.
We adopted our first header bidder partner, and this is before it was called header bidding.
Okay.
It didn't have a name, was Index Exchange. So I knew you're talking to Andrew soon, and he I'm sure remembers that story.
I'll have to go back and have the Andrew conversation.
And if you tell, and they're, not to spoil his story, but like their business was very different back then too. And they were getting really more help. They were more of a pure ad network, and they were trying to become a programmatic company. And, this was really a way for them to get ahead too. So I think, it was a very interesting time because a lot of things changed. A lot of companies changed based on that technology.
And then Raptive now is 5,000, but now it's 5,200 publishers you support. What do you exactly do for them? Like, I know you do ad serving, programmatic, what else? And it feels like that keeps on growing potentially.
Yep. So our core business is we run the full programmatic ad stack for all those publishers and creators.
That's how everything started, right?
That's how everything started. We also, and we run the programmatic ad stack, we run the ad server, we run the sales team, all like basically we're like outsourced ad operations, everything. It's for publishers who can't or don't want to deal with the nonsense of programmatic and ad servers and advertisers and whatever. We take all that away.
And this way the publishers can worry about making great content.
Exactly.
And then you could worry about the business side of everything.
Exactly. 100%. We do also now provide like more and more services to the people we work with. So we have SEO teams, we have email marketing teams. Even for some of our biggest creators and publishers, we have a PR team that does PR for them, not for us. So it's figuring out how do you enable these people, again, to spend more time on what they're great at and let us take away more of the
how do you decide which next one to add to your platform? Like there must be like 7 other things on the list and someone's got to go through, okay.
I mean, it's funny. I was talking to my wife about this last night, not this exact thing, but as we've gotten bigger as a company, we've gotten more structured around like, how do you get ideas to happen?
Okay.
And so, we've adopted a little bit of like the Amazon approach of like writing things down. And we have this, like write the press release before you do anything sort of thing, and write a brief document that explains what you want to do.
Does that help?
I find tremendously. We're 95% remote company. And so writing things down is one of the most critical ways to, one, force yourself to crystallize your idea and think through all the components of it. Number one. And number two, clearly communicate what you want to other people. And that's like, I think critical in general, but doubly critical at a highly remote company to get everybody on the same
It's funny.
page.
Recently I wrote for a company, I wrote like a 12-page Word document.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, this is too much. Make it a simple PowerPoint. And I'm like, really? Like the 12-page document was like everything you wanted, and the little simple PowerPoint just did not convey anything I wanted to convey, and it felt like I took something away. So I hear what you're saying about that.
We are fans of the document. So it's a powerful tool.
And 95% remote, how's that working? Is it okay today?
It's great. I mean, we were 75% remote before COVID, and COVID just accelerated a trend that was already happening. We still have a New York office, today, tomorrow, it's Wednesday right now when we're recording this. Wednesdays and Thursdays, probably 20, 25 people in the office. Most Monday, Tuesday, Friday.
Is there free food Wednesdays and Thursdays?
Free food Thursdays.
Okay, that's why people come on Thursdays.
And the sales team comes in Wednesdays as like kind of their anchor day. So those days have like pretty good population, but otherwise, like you come in on a Monday, like you're lucky if there's 1 or 2 other people there. We've got space for 100 in the office, so it's pretty empty on those days. But we work well together, and we've set up a lot of good processes to make remote work.
Do you get together once a year, twice a year with how many employees now? A couple hundred?
350, 375, something like that.
That's pretty, that's not that much for how much you do.
It's maybe not. We try to be efficient. We try to build tools and systems to automate things and make things easier and get, things out of people's hair and whatever, and let people work on like the more important things. To the point of like, we've been doing offsites on a kind of large team by team basis. I mean, people who work at bigger companies know the pain of like an offsite for hundreds of people or thousands of people is like painfully hard to execute.
Logistical nightmare.
And so we've been like, let's do like a 60-person team meeting.
Okay, not the 350.
No, and that's been working pretty well for us. And we do some amount of cross-pollination between them. We also do a fair number of events for our customers. And so a lot of us
right, because I have my events all the time, and I always have to call you first and say, are you available? And half the time I was like, I got some creator event I need to go to. Can't make it that day. Okay, let's move it for Paul.
Yeah, we've been good at executing events for our customers as well, and that goes a long way.
Can you tell me a little bit about the creator events you have? Because I was fascinated by that story.
So we probably do 10 or so events a year at this point. 3 of them are sort of like anchor events where we take our absolute biggest customers, get everybody to a great destination. We did one in June in Miami. We had 50 of our big creators and publishers there. And, it's part us presenting, it's part conversations, it's part working groups, it's part.
But that's a great way to get your team together and your top creators together. Yeah. And
great way to get ideas, figure out what you should be doing, what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong.
And then someone's got to write the 8-page memo about what the big idea was. You got to present it to the big group.
Exactly.
Okay. Today is actually Wednesday, August 14th. And I want to talk about the Google antitrust. But what I really want to talk about is the remedies. Mm-hmm. And so I was talking to someone today, actually Matt Wheatland, and we're talking about if you split up Google, what would it look like? And I took it a step further. I said, if you split up Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple, and Microsoft, those 5, what would that look like?
Yeah.
And the one that was the most interesting to me out of all those was take YouTube out of Google because I think that then creates a huge company that can actually compete in search, and maybe they reinvent video search in some different way.
Yep.
The other one I love was take the Chrome browser out of Google, because to me, the Chrome browser is synonymous with search. And if I had to put something else in the little search URL bar, what does that mean?
Yep.
What are your initial thoughts on, and then you could take it, split Facebook into 3, split Amazon into 4, and we were talking about who is left of those 5 companies who actually created the company. There's only one left, which is Zuckerberg. So he wouldn't want to do it, but everybody else. So riff on that. What do you think?
I mean, there's a million different ways to do it. I think you listed some of the interesting ones. I think fairness isn't really a concept in this, but to be fair, I think if you do something to Google, you should do the equivalent to its.
Oh, sorry. I want to do it to all 5.
You want to do it to
I'll do all 5.
Exactly. Although, a little bit, it's like, how much are we pontificating about what could happen, and how much are we saying, like, what should the FTC, DOJ,
whoever it is,
do, which are sort of like 2 different things. I do think it would be pretty interesting and important to separate the buy side and the sell side. And I mean that in a bigger sense than I think most people think about it, because I think the search ads buying platform should be removed from Google. Like, if Google remained like the search engine, the ad buying platform is separated from that. And then that would allow that ad buying platform to buy ads also on Bing or on.
And then other companies could buy ads on Google as well.
And then other companies could buy ads on Google.
So Google is just a search engine, but they won't be able to monetize it.
Well, themselves. I mean, exactly. They wouldn't be able to monetize it themselves.
They have third parties monetizing it.
I mean, it's akin to what happens in the financial markets, where it's like you can't take positions on both sides of the market, and there's all kinds of rules and stuff around that. So it's like we separate the buy side and the sell side here. You may drive a lot of innovation on both sides of the equation, because it unlocks a lot of possibilities that don't exist. Like, the Trade Desk could start buying ads on Google.com for search. Like, that'd be cool. And Jeff, I'm sure, has thought about that idea before. But it's like, how do you open up those sort of opportunities that don't exist at all today, or impossible?
Yeah, and I was also hearkening back to, there was a podcast this morning from the New York Times about the Microsoft trial. And they said the remedy was actually splitting up to 2 companies. One would be Office and one would be Windows.
Yep.
And think what that would have changed the ecosystem.
Yeah. And I think that's important too, is like the Microsoft remedies seem to have been pretty effective at, even though they weren't totally targeted at the right things, they became pretty effective at like driving a lot of innovation. And I do think like it's doubly important here. And I'm a little bit moving on, we're talking a little bit about like the search trial where they've been found guilty already. And like soon as the ad tech trial, which is the one that, all of us in the industry are even more interested in seeing what happens. I think that there are remedies that could come out of that would actually be bad. Like, to some level, like I think the core remedy that the DOJ has asked for specifically on the ad tech part of the world, if they were to win that, is to separate GAM and AdX from the buy side. And I actually think that's bad on its own.
Well, there's unintended consequences of all these that if you play them through a little bit, you're like, it might not be good.
Exactly.
The perfect example is, let's say Google does not pay Apple the $20 billion, right? So Apple loses 99% margin on $20 billion.
Yeah. Firefox goes out of business.
Right. And if you're on the Apple phone, are you still going to go to Google? Or are you going to because the thing is, I was just saying, we've been so conditioned for the past 20 years about how to search.
Yeah.
Right. And I said to Matt Wheatland, it's like you go home and your electricity doesn't work and you have to get an electricity provider. You don't know how to do those things. That you'd be so conditioned that electricity, like Google just works.
Yep.
And that sometimes I wish in the URL bar, instead of having Google there, because that's how we search, like, what if Perplexity popped up or something else? And what if I learned how to use a different search engine? That'd be pretty cool. But I haven't learned how to do something new in forever when it comes to that.
Yeah. I agree that if you remove the defaults that have benefited Google in the past, today, I don't think it makes a difference. People still are going to use Google. They're going to make Google their default. They're going to keep using it. It is what it is.
Or Perplexity has to say, hey, Paul Bannister, I'll give you $10 for the next 6 months. Just let Perplexity be the default search engine. And guess what? Wow, that thing's really good. But, they had to pay me to do it. But maybe that's how it works.
Well, and also, I think, yes, although on the flip side, if a browser, whichever one, made the default not Google. I mean, to some level, Edge is a pretty good example. If I were to use Edge as a browser, the first thing I would do is change the default from Bing to Google, because I don't think Bing is as good, and therefore I'm going to use Google. So it's like literally you're just making the user experience
so the
worse,
thing is,
and they're going to change anything.
I don't think Bing is as good. I don't think DuckDuckGo is as good. But what if the new Gen AI search engines are not as good, but they're totally something different and interesting?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, I don't think I'm ever going to get a chance to use them because I'm so used to just defaulting to Google and getting those answers.
People's habits are a very hard thing to change. Like Gen AI, which I know we're going to talk about more generally, like, is a big thing where it's like, even if there are things right now that are happening that are like totally transformative and different, which to some level there are, if people don't change their behaviors and use those things, they don't really matter that much. And it's like, I think it takes a long time for people to change the way they work.
Okay, let's move to Gen AI.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that Gen AI is going to fundamentally change the way that we consume news and information.
Yep.
I don't know how yet. I don't know how it visually looks like, but I think it's going to fundamentally change. And I think there's going to be a couple publishers that'll do it first, and then everyone else will fast follow.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts?
I agree that it is going to fundamentally change the way media and advertising and the broader world works.
I said news and information.
News and information. But fine, I'm making it even broader.
Okay.
I think it'll change all of it, but we'll stick with news and information. I think the concern is like, do publishers have a role to play at all? Or is this just tech giants scraping the universe of its content and then regurgitating new content that defeats, Google's AI overviews is the best example so far, where it's like, scrape the content from the web and then put Google's version of something on top of the results on the web so people spend more time on google.com. If you follow that to its logical conclusion, pre-DOJ intervention, whatever, does Google just control all content and there's no publishers anymore at all? I'd like to agree with you. I'd like to believe in what you're saying. I don't know with the current way things are going, whether that's true.
Well, and I believe you need other companies to help news and information publishers recreate how content is made.
Yes.
Because I think news and information publishers can't do it on their own because they've been doing it, like we said, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Daily Mail, they've been doing it for 100, 200 years. It's hard to fundamentally change that. You need some great tech minds to come in there and help you change that.
Yeah. I mean, it's also all been like all of these like automations and simplifications have been like very industry by industry or vertical by vertical, not industry by industry, within the media world where, 10 years ago, systems effectively disintermediated weather and sports scores.
Right. I talked to Stephen Smith about that from AccuWeather. He's like, we've already gone through this 10 years ago.
Yeah. And so like they've already lost a lot of traffic. Systems already like generate the weather and like you don't need like content layered on top of it. Whereas on the reverse side of that, I think like hard news reporting and journalism, like until there are, robots that can fly around interviewing people and like generating like original research and journalism, like which is pretty far off, news is going to be really hard to disintermediate.
Right. And going back, like I still believe news and information needs to be created by a source, a person. They might have help. And that person needs to make one piece of content that's probably bigger and different than they do today. Then the AI sees it and can feed it back to individuals in 10, 20, 30, 40 different ways.
Yeah.
Like I always say, when I see a news article, I want like, this is great. Give me the longer version and send it to me in a podcast. So at 6 o'clock in the morning when I walk my dog, I can listen to it.
Yeah.
But the AI needs to be able to figure it out. I need to be able to go back and forth and talk and have that conversation with it.
Yeah. I agree with that. The question is just like, what parts of media will AI eat first and what's sort of the progression?
But I don't think it's ever going to play out worst case scenario where news and information goes away.
I mean, if you believe the AI, I don't know what they call them, like the people who work at OpenAI and the people who are like the hardcore researchers, like what the logical conclusion is. Like the logical conclusion is that like within 10 years, there are AIs that are far, far, far smarter than the smartest human in the world today. And there are effectively millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of those entities. Like that's a different world. At that point, if you believe that,
Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to save us in that one.
Hopefully so.
Okay, let's move now to talking about your business again. And have you seen search go down? What are you seeing? Because it's mostly a lot of recipes, a lot of female site right now, female-oriented site content.
I mean, it's heavily lifestyle, I would say.
Okay, lifestyle.
Food is the biggest vertical. Home and parenting are very big. Travel is big. Personal finance is big. Like tech and video games is pretty big. So it's like it's kind of spread out and more spreading out. So the interesting connection to the last thing we were talking about, to AI and what's going on here is, in addition to Google doing AI overviews and trying to use AI to generate content that sits at the top of search results, Google has made a lot of effort over the last year or year and a half now to get AI generated content from others out of search results and get like low quality content out of search results. I think everyone would agree that over the last couple of years, like Google search results have like declined in quality because people have figured out ways to game the system and spam things in and whatever.
But we still use it all the time. And we still got the 90% share, which is, it feels like no matter what they do, you still use it.
And well, partly it's like there's nothing better, so it's like you deal with what it is.
Well, there's nothing better because nothing else better was ever funded to be better, right?
Yeah.
Like you need billions upon billions to be able to fund a great search engine today.
100%, 100%. And so Google's also launched a number of its algorithm updates. These are called, and they typically do like what they're called core algorithm updates, like every couple of times a year, usually. Over the last 18 months, they've been doing these ones that they call helpful content updates, which is like a type of core update that has been trying to promote helpful content, in air quotes there, that is better stuff. And that has had a very large impact on search results, like lots of ups and lots of downs. And we've done a lot of research on this. I'm going to cross all the sites that we work with.
Because you have 5,200 sites, so you know what's going on.
We have a lot of data. We have years and years of data on many of them. So we can look at real trends, understand seasonality, understand kind of what the ups and downs should be and what they are instead. And so we've seen impacts on search. I mean, not enormous at an aggregate level for us, high single digit percentage points. On the reverse side, when you look at individual sites, massive deltas. We have sites where search has gone effectively to zero. We have sites where search is down 95%. We have sites where search is quadrupled. And so we
literally they had a million users one day and the next day something happens and they're down to like,
it's basically gone. And so
you must wake up every day like, is this the day? Like how depressing that is.
I mean, all we can do in this world, which is a philosophy we have anyway, is like, how do we help people make better content? Like if we have content in our network that's like not good or has
the content that went from 1 million to 0 was a good content.
I mean, there are some exceptions to the rules about algorithm issues and whatever else. But generally speaking, the answer is no. The content wasn't great or had some number of problems with it. And it's our job then to find better content and encourage better content. And we're totally behind that.
Right, because at the end of the day, you make great content. You have to assume that the users will find
better for users, better for long-term health of our business and our customers' businesses, better for advertisers. It's better for the ecosystem at large. Like it's better.
It's crazy. Okay, now you live on the Upper West Side, right? And you have 2 kids.
Yep.
How old are your kids?
12 and 14.
12 and 14. My kids are much older.
Yeah.
Okay, and you go to the beach a lot, right?
I like the beach.
Okay, what are your hobbies, Paul Bannister? I don't know this.
Yeah, so
I can guess. I think I know what one is.
So go for it.
I think you like astronomy.
I would love to like astronomy, and I have a telescope.
That's why I said it.
I am terrible at using it. I don't know what to do.
Okay.
I have like looked at the moon.
Okay, I'm 0 for 1.
The extent of it. I would like to have that as a hobby. I just have not figured it out. Something I mentioned at the beginning that was a hobby a long time ago and still is a hobby is video games. I like video games. Like,
do you play with your kids?
So some of my kids, some on my own. Like I'm not a big TV watcher. So like if I've got half an hour of downtime, like I'll play a video game.
What video game?
Recently I've been playing Diablo 4.
Okay.
So
it's over my head.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm a gamer and have been since when I was very young.
What else? What other hobbies?
I don't know if you call it a hobby part of the year, but I like to ski. So I can't go to the beach. I go skiing. We'll ski a bunch this winter and get out there and go to a bunch of different places. So that's something that I enjoy doing. And one thing also that, again, like, is this a hobby or not? I'm not sure. But before we had kids, my wife and I traveled a ton. Since we've had kids, we travel a lot less. But now that my kids are older, we're traveling with them a lot more. So I love traveling. Like this year we've been to Italy and Iceland. We'll probably go somewhere out west later in the year that we haven't been to before, maybe like Montana or something like that. So it's like we like to.
But over Christmas, you'll ski.
We'll go to big spot. The idea on the table is going to Big Sky for skiing in over Christmas week.
Okay.
So we'll see Montana and get some good skiing in.
And how about food? Are you a big foodie?
I like to cook. I'm the cook in my household.
What's your favorite thing to make?
I like grilling when I can.
Oh, I love grilling.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of like partly also like with kids, I got into a habit of just like making the same 12 things over and over and over again. And like now I'm actually starting to branch out again where I have more time. And it's like like to some level, my favorite thing to cook is something new and interesting, more than a specific thing.
And how do your kids use search?
So my kids are counterculture. So they both use Bing.
What?
They both use Edge. They both use Bing.
How'd that come about? Just because the antithesis of dad?
I think, no, because on the reverse side, everyone in my house uses Androids, which is,
oh yeah, that's right. You are the green bubble.
Yes.
You are the green bubble.
Although
that's going to change, right?
Soon, yeah.
But you're a green bubble right now.
Yep, exactly. And you're like a gray bubble or something on my side. And
I think I'm blue. I should be blue, but who knows?
So they use Bing. Part of actually the reason they like Microsoft stuff is because when they were younger, and even to some level now, they were big Minecraft fans. And Minecraft was bought by Microsoft, and that sort of like introduced Microsoft as a concept to them. And they were like, ooh, this company that makes Minecraft also has a web browser. Sign me up. So a little bit like that actually is a smart entry point for Microsoft to like influence a little bit of the next generation, because it's like they have a very positive brand association with Microsoft.
Do they search on TikTok?
They're not big on social media. They're YouTube Shorts kids.
Okay.
They've watched a lot of that, but they don't. I don't think they have any social media accounts yet.
Not that you know of.
Not that I know of, and I think they would tell me.
Okay. And in 5 years, where do you think you will be? I can ask you about your company, but where do you think you'll be in 5 years? Where do you think the industry will be in 5 years?
I'd like to be on the beach. I'm not sure that totally will happen. Where will the industry be in 5 years? Hopefully these things happening right now to big tech, Google being kind of the first in line, but a lot of them are under.
But there's like 3 other ones happening, right?
There's a bunch of big antitrust cases. There's also all these regulations in the EU that are changing the way these companies have to operate. And, hopefully it does create a whole new raft of competition that really shakes things up and makes things more interesting than they are today. I'd also love specifically for like the open internet, broadly speaking, to like increasing quality and value to users and advertisers. I feel like there's still too much junk and fraud and garbage floating around. And like the more that can be stamped out and like better companies can do better things and drive more value again for users and advertisers and for publishers, obviously.
But it feels like there's so many iterations of trying to keep the open internet clean and better and safer, and it goes up and then it comes down, and it's whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
Like it feels like it never gets better.
I think it is better than it was 10 years ago, but the complicated part is it's also more transparent. So it's easier to see the bad things today than it was before. So it's like it's good, but causes its own set of challenges.
Paul Bannister, absolute pleasure. You bring me pure joy every time I see you, whether it's in person at a dinner or on a Zoom. I want to say thank you so much for being here. Great conversation. We didn't talk about third-party cookie deprecation or privacy sandbox at all, which was part of my goal.
Love it.
Because you talk about that all the time, or you go to LinkedIn all the time. So again, thank you, Paul. Thank you, OpenWeb. Lifelong dream of mine for doing these podcasts. And thank you to all the listeners. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.